So one of when we're talking about bad habits, certainly a very bad habit that I used to have a lot more often when I was early on in my career as a doctor, and very occasionally it rears its ugly head now, but less so because I know I'm aware of it, is this kind of negative self-talk and
Mm,
negative perception of myself. So say, for example, when I was first learning my trade in surgery, if I got to a step that I was stuck at and my boss had to take over, I would berate myself. I would tell myself that, damn, I'm not good enough. I need to improve. And even though for me at the time, that was almost a sense of me trying to gain control over my own skills and improvement,
yeah.
I thought that was a good thing. Like, negative reinforcement to say, no, you're rubbish. You need to improve. You need to work harder.
Hmm.
But actually that had the opposite effect. It had a paradoxical effect, and I was actually less confident in my own ability. And it was only after, realizing that I actually thrive on positive reinforcement, and likely every person does at their core of things, it made sense to, on a neurobiological level as well, which
Hmm.
I'm sure you'll tell me, that actually positively talking about yourself and about your situation influences your experience and perception of the world around you, which is better from a neurological perspective.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you said that, because that's exactly what I was going to say is it was your way of trying to gain control of the situation. So when you do something wrong and your supervisor has to take over, or you smoke the cigarette, or you eat the McDonald's, your attempt to gain control of the situation is by berating yourself. That becomes a learned behavior as well, because you subconsciously start to think, and this is where we're going into the realms of more psychology, you start to
Mm.
think, well, it doesn't really matter if I do that later, because I can just berate myself and that's my form of control. But Tali Sharot actually proved that we don't learn well on negative information. We only learn from negative information if it's very meaningful. So you're a doctor and you say to me, Nicole, if you smoke a cigarette tomorrow, you're going to die. And I believe you. Then I wouldn't smoke that cigarette. I don't smoke, but if I did smoke, so, but if you tell someone smoking's bad for you, you should probably stop, it's not really going to work. It has to come from within, and this came from the research of Tani Sharrett, where she actually looked at the stock trade market in 2000, well, from 2006 all the way through to 2008 before the crash. And what they saw was that when the stock trade was high, or the stock index was high, there were a lot of logins, because that positive reinforcement was making people feel good. They wanted to make sure that they were still, keeping up with the trajectories. When the stock trade market was low, people were burying their head in the sand. We call it the ostrich effect, because they didn't want to know. They didn't want to change anything based on that information either, because we don't learn from negative information. The only time that there were check-ins when the stock trade market was low was when it crashed, because then people had to know due to survival. And then she sort of moved that all into sort of a whole area of behavioral research that shows that we do learn on positive behavioral reinforcement. So if you say to yourself, well done, you didn't smoke today, maybe you only smoked 1 out of 20, that's fine. You're still smoking 19 cigarettes less, or, you're still a student, you're still learning. The surgeon had to help you, of course, like were you an intern at the time or junior doctor? That kind of helps to alleviate that negative control from the situation, because it doesn't drive behavioral change. When we reward ourselves or speak positively to ourselves, we also release feel-good chemicals, namely dopamine. Again, we don't have dopamine in isolation. It'll be a plethora of neurotransmitters working proactively together to make us feel a particular way, but more importantly, dopamine, because dopamine is released when we do something that makes us feel good, because it's a reward-based learning mechanism that says, we got this reward, let's do that again. It's the reason why you keep checking your phone, because you don't know if you're going to have that nice comment, you don't know if you're going to have a notification, you
Mm.
don't know if someone's messaged you, or that person that maybe you're looking for in your views on the stories, all those little things that keep you engaged with social media. And that's the same thing with being positive with ourselves, and kind of just taking that shift from that negativity bias into the positive and rewarding ourselves for the small wins. Because if we don't reward the small wins, we will overlook them.